All right. Hey, Steve, how are you doing this morning? Oh, Steve, you're on mute.
Yep, there we go. I'm doing great. So I live here in Indianapolis, and the weather has been a bit of a yo-yo lately, but it looks like it's going to be warm and sunny outside today. So I'll take it. So how about you, Jim?
I'm good. I'm here in the Bay Area, just south of the city. Just another day. It all blurs. It's all the same, working from home. But appreciate you joining us. So, Steve, you are president of Delta Tau Delta Education Foundation.
Yep.
This is our first conversation around kind of the nonprofit, the giving space. I'm really interested to get your perspective of just the impact of COVID-19 and just how your world has changed. Maybe you could share with us a little bit about just what your organization looks like in terms of a sales motion and sort of our audience is thinking about how we reach out to people and engage.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just give a brief overview of what the Delts Foundation does, and we are basically the fundraising arm of a college fraternity. So we go out and solicit alumni, friends of the fraternity to basically create resources and revenue to support the educational initiatives of the fraternity. What I've been telling my board members and some other people over the last couple of weeks is, about 3 months ago, I had a conversation with my vice president of operations and said, hey, are we positioned to work remotely? Because right now, half of our team, actually all of our sales team works remotely. I said, what about the rest of our team? She said, yeah, for the most part, we are. So no doubt this, has still been an adjustment for our organization. But the reality is that we were pretty well positioned from a sales side of things. So, what we have seen is, the challenge or what we've really said is the opportunity is getting our clients, our donors up to speed on technology that's available so that we can best communicate with them. And Zoom and other platforms have just been absolutely fantastic for us. So.
Well, and in terms of, you've moved into the work from home, how many total folks do you have that are doing outreach to, different parties?
Yeah, we have a total of 9 staff, and we have 5, fundraising, revenue generators from that perspective. So we have myself and my vice president who are in Indianapolis. Then we have a guy in Pittsburgh, a guy in Detroit, and then a guy in Wisconsin. So, but we are truly a national nonprofit, meaning that our alumni and our donor base is all over the country, all over the world. In fact, I mean, yeah. We have some donors in China and Ireland and other places. So, but we're all pretty used to traveling and meeting with people face to face and handshakes and coffee shops and stuff like that. So
what is that? What are we talking about?
Yeah, it's I had one of my donors tell me the other day, he said, handshakes may become a thing of the past.
It's so crazy.
I'm still trying to get used to the debit card thing of where I slide it in or whatever, that all of that has changed. So
so Steve, curious from your perspective, we've talked as a collective group about sales meetings essentially being fairly flat. It bounced back up 9% week over week. But on the gifting, on the nonprofit side, tell me what that looks like. I mean, from an outsider, I would think it must be incredibly hard to ask people to be making donations. But that's just an opinion. What is the data showing you?
Yeah, I mean, there's actually a lot of ways to approach that, Jim, and that from a very high level. We have a gift pyramid, which is a lot like a sales pyramid. So we know that 90% of our gifts, sometimes even 95% of those gifts that are going to move the foundation forward, are going to come from 5 or 10% of the people. And so many of those individuals have high capacity, and this is not necessarily something that's going to affect them on a day-to-day. Many of them have foundations where their gifts have already been made, and so they're required by law to grant those out. So we're certainly making sure that we spend time with those individuals. But certainly it's a much more competitive marketplace. Not that the nonprofit industry isn't on a typical basis, but what we have really shared with our donors is our priorities during this time. So we have a fund called Delts Helping Delts. So we know that with 9,500 undergraduates all across the country, that we have undergraduates who are stuck overseas from study abroad. We have ones that have been displaced without housing. And so we've been able to make some significant grants recently to kind of help smooth out the highs and lows for those young people. So scholarships, certainly as the market changes, young people will want to stay in school. So we feel like, our message is competitive, in terms of the marketplace. We've been fortunate enough that about 5 years ago, we started a recurring gift program, which allows people to give on a monthly basis. So that has been helpful for us because it's consistently bringing in cash right now in smaller amounts, which I would imagine it's easier for donors to sustain that, even if the spouse is no longer working. But we've only seen a slight dip in consistent giving. So we're fortunate from that perspective.
Yeah, very fortunate. The subscription side is, adds a lot of consistency. In terms of, we've shared in the past just that COVID mentions, they popped up into, almost all cold calls and 50% of meetings. It's finally starting to drop. We're not seeing the mention, of COVID-19 as much. Well, it dropped 12% in the sales calls. How has your message changed as you're reaching out to donors? Has your message changed in the last 6 weeks? And if so, what is it and how are you connecting with people?
Yeah, I think it's actually changed within the last 2 weeks. We've had a lot of discussions with board members. So we actually started the largest campaign in the history of our organization in late February. So what we call that's a silent phase, where we're going out and getting first level investors to make their gift commitments. And so we, had about 3 weeks of really good fundraising and results. And then, we put that on pause. We are now starting to go back, into the solicitation phase, certainly being more flexible maybe than we were on the front end originally. So if people need a longer time to potentially pay off pledges and stuff like that, we can certainly be flexible. So for us, the reality is that the data shows, we're trying to make real database decisions. And so what we do know is that there are people out there who, because of the current crisis, are looking to give more. About 30% of, donor populations are saying that they're looking to increase their giving. But we also know that based on 2008, 2009 numbers, that, where people may have traditionally supported 7 or 8 nonprofits, they may only support, their top 3. So we need to be consistently reaching out, putting content out there, having conversations, with our most, valuable donors, and communicating to them how their dollars can really make a difference. So
that's impressive. So, it's great to hear that some give a lot more during these times. It resonates. And I think that your message about how, look, they might not give to as many foundations right now is consistent with just the message. Yesterday I was talking to Ryan at Vendor, who, they work on software procurement, and it was all about, look, it's obvious that finance has to review every deal right now. And the aha is, boy, if we're not setting up our deals for finance, we're missing things. I think for all of us, what you're just getting at is that the ability to make sure that what we do truly, rises to the top in terms of value for others is so, critical right now. I was curious, when you think about, this is some of the language from a sales team, but first meeting volume, has been continuing to hold up. We're starting to see a nice uptick in the amount of time AEs are spending on first meetings versus other activities. When it comes to gifting and donors, are you seeing, it sounds like you're seeing it in some ways. Some people lean into this, but are you able to continue to build up sort of the opportunities for Q2 and beyond and reach out to new donors at this time?
Yeah, I mean, right now we've been focusing on people who, most fundraising operations will focus on those. It's a lot cheaper to renew people than it is, similar to business than it is to get new donors. So we're just making sure that our most loyal and consistent donors, that we're reaching out to them first. So as I mentioned, we have five gift officers on staff, myself included. And we have about 4,000 donors and 120,000 alumni. So the pool is a large one. So we're still working our way, through that group, thoughtfully. I will say, as someone who manages salespeople, I think that there's definitely had to be some adjustments. Being on camera and Zoom meetings all day long it's a little bit different. But I think that what we have found is that maybe those older alums who would have been resistant to this technology are actually embracing it, and that we're, to your point earlier about providing value, we're helping them get set up. They meet with us, but then it's easier for them to meet with their family or their friends or people that they haven't connected to in a long time. So I've been on a number of calls where people have connected and haven't seen each other in 20 years. And so I think that's truly the name of the game is, how do you provide value? And sometimes that can just be asking good questions and listening, right? So I think with everybody kind of holed up in their homes and maybe some of the challenges that come along with that, I think that just being a really good listener goes a long way, and just being aware of what people may need at this point. So,
Steve, what's the biggest, surprise? I mean, something from the last few weeks and the changes. I mean, what out there has been different than you expected that's created that aha for you in this process?
You definitely understand where loyalties lie, and meaning that those people who we've had a number of people step forward to make gifts, which has been really impressive and heartwarming, that maybe wouldn't have expected. But I guess from a larger sense, more me personally, it's just the power of, and I'm a fundraiser, so I'm, consistently positive anyway. But that's just the way we are. That's the way most fundraisers are made. But I think that people really appreciate that. And there's a lot of unknowns. And so it's important to remind people that, this full story hasn't been written yet. And so, when I think about what I'm posting on LinkedIn and, the conversations I'm having, it's my personal goal to be the most positive person that, those people are going to talk to today. And that's not pie in the sky. I mean, that's not, it's not that I'm not facing the realities of this thing, because there certainly are, as we do potential projections internally about different scenarios that may exist. But we all have the power to really make an impact on other people day to day and the outlook on this thing. And again, I think it's about asking good questions and maybe avoiding some of those catchphrases of "we're all in this together." It's about being authentic and really asking people how they're doing, and not just saying, "Hey, how you doing?" But I mean, really saying, getting to the meat of things and getting to know people personally as much as you can. So.
No, I mean, that's the special part of, I think, crisis is people come together and you just see true colors. You made one comment that sort of validates, why we do these daily briefings. As an outsider, I would assume this is a hard time to go cold call and do outreach to people to say, times are tough. Can you make a donation?
Yeah.
Yet you're saying people do that. And, people, if you called them and made the effort right now, there's a whole bunch of people that have the ability to give that are wanting to help at this time, because they also recognize people are in challenge. That's the inspiring part. It's easy to think we should just stop selling. We should, hole up.
Nope.
Tell me, is there any, if your team made those calls right now, is that right? Would people really, respond and talk to them and engage and not just tell them to, buzz off, call me in the future?
Yeah. I mean, I guess what I would say is that, just based on the size and relative ratios of our staff to the potential that's out there, we're for the most part calling people who we already have relationships with. So that may make a difference. But I think that assumptions can be extremely, dangerous, and that, we have a donor who is in the wholesale fitness equipment industry, and he just opened up a retail store. And I was kind of thinking, man, this is probably the worst time to open up a retail anything. And, reach out to him and had a conversation, and he increased his gift because he said, look, with gyms being closed, my sales are up 350%. And so again, I think it can be dangerous to assume that people don't want to give or don't have capacity. This is, we certainly have to be conscious for those who that is a concern, but philanthropy is different than sales a little bit, that we're leveraging the relationship and pulling on people's heartstrings a little bit, or making the case of, why this is needed. And so, that just shows it's a little bit of a different dynamic than sales, although on the surface, there's many similarities.
No, it's super helpful. Look, I think it's a fresh perspective, Steve. I appreciate you taking time to join us today on kind of the daily briefing, and just to give your perspective of what it's like to be on the donor side and talking to that group.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you doing what you do. Glad you are doing well. And thanks for kicking off the day with us.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jim.
Okay. See you around. Thanks.
Bye.